Hello world. Today we're gonna be talking about Genshin Impact's brand new 5-star character, Xilonen. She's a very special unit, as it's usually quite rare to see a Geo unit in a non-Geo team that isn't Zhongli. However, she just might change that with the myriad of buffs she provides with her kit alone. That being said, this kit in question is quite lengthy and complex, so let's not waste any more time and jump straight into it. For this segment, I'll use a bit of a different format than usual. I'll be displaying something like bullet points as I verbally explain in depth what every skill does. Her normal attack, a Hekat's Roar, allows her to perform up to 3 rapid strikes. Her charge attack consumes stamina to perform a kick. Here's where it gets weird. Her plunging attack scales with defense, not attack. Also worth noting, it doesn't deal geo damage. Furthermore, Xilonen's skill completely changes her normal attacks, switching to 4 kicks and dealing Night Soul aligned geo damage. She cannot use charge attacks, and plunging attacks become geo damage too. Now that we're on the topic of her skill, Yohua's Scratch gives her 45 Night Soul points and makes her switch to her rollerblades, increasing her movement speed and allowing her to climb easily. She can also turn into an ocelot while climbing to perform a high-speed leap. In combat, it changes her normal attack sequence as mentioned earlier, while also unlocking Xilonen's source samples. These source samples are displayed next to her Night Soul's Blessing gauge. They're initially Geo, but for each party member who is Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro, they turn into the corresponding element. They don't even have to be different elements. When her Night Soul's Blessing gauge is full, Xilonen will consume all Night Soul points and activate the source samples, decreasing nearby enemies' resistance to the elements in question for 15 seconds, even while Xilonen is off-field. You can charge her Night Soul points by performing normal attacks while in her Night Soul's Blessing state, as long as she has at least 2 different source samples. More on this later. It's also worth noting that her skill cannot last more than 9 seconds, no matter how many Night Soul points you have. And finally, her burst, Ocelot Lique point, deals Night Soul aligned AoE geo damage, scaling with Xilonen's defense. Furthermore, the following effects can be triggered based on her source samples. If she has at least 2 different non-geo elements on her source samples, Xilonen will heal nearby active characters, scaling with her defense. If she has fewer than 2, she will instead perform 2 additional instances of Night Soul aligned AoE geo damage, scaling with her defense. Now let's talk about some notable parts of her passive skills. Night Realm's Gift, Blessing of Forge Fire, allows her teammates to use Night Soul Transmission Xilonen while they're sprinting, climbing, in a movement mode caused by certain talents, or at a certain height. This will immediately switch to Xilonen in her rollerblades, giving her 20 Night Soul points that expire in 4 seconds. However, using her skill during this time will extend it by 9 seconds. Additionally, while in Natlan, Xilonen will not consume stamina when climbing in her Night Soul Blessing state. Netotilitzli's Echoes allows Xilonen to regenerate 35 Night Soul points when hitting normal or plunging attacks, every 0.1 seconds as long as she has at least 2 source samples of different elements. Otherwise, if she has less than 2, her normal and plunging attacks deal 30% increased damage. Portable Armored Sheath triggers an effect equal to Xilonen's Night Soul Burst when her Night Soul points reach the maximum in her Night Soul's Blessing state. This effect has a cooldown of 14 seconds. Furthermore, when her party members trigger a Night Soul Burst, Xilonen's defense increases by 20% for 15 seconds. Xilonen has some of, if not the most broken constellations in the whole game, so if you're willing or maybe even planning to get some of them, here's a quick rundown of them. C1 basically extends her Night Soul's Blessing state by a lot, and increases your active character's resistance to interruption when her source samples are active. Her C2 is insane, permanently activating her Geo source sample and giving unbelievable buffs to her party members, corresponding to the source sample that matches their element. Geo gets a 50% damage increase, Pyro 45% attack increase, Hydro 45% max HP increase, Cryo 60% crit damage, and Electro gets 25 energy and cooldown reduction under elemental bursts. C3 increases her skills level by 3, raising its maximum accordingly. C4 gives all party members a normal, charged, and plunge attack damage boost after Xilonen uses her elemental skill, equal to 65% of Xilonen's defense. This effect is removed after triggering 6 times or after 15 seconds. Triggers are based on how many opponents you hit and not how many attacks you performed, and they are all counted independently for each party member. C5 increases her bursts level by 3, raising its maximum accordingly, and her C6 gives Xilonen Imperishable Knight's Blessing after sprinting, leaping, or using normal or plunging attacks when she's in her Night Soul's Blessing state. Imperishable Knight's Blessing lasts for 5 seconds and will trigger all of the following effects. Xilonen's Night Soul points, phlogiston, and stamina will not decrease, while also pausing the time limit on her elemental skill. Additionally, after her Night Soul points reach their maximum, her Night Soul's blessing state will not end. She will also deal 300% of her defense as increased normal and plunging attack damage while in the Night Soul's blessing state. Last but not least, she heals nearby party members for 120% of her defense every 1.5 seconds. Afterwards, Imperishable Knight's Blessing enters a 15-second cooldown. Trust me, I tried my best to summarize everything, but feel free to pause the video for a second if you need a break before we talk about her weapons. Her best in slot is of course her signature weapon, Peak Patrol Song, increasing defense by 8% and gaining a 10% all elemental damage bonus for 6 seconds whenever you hit opponents with your normal or plunging attacks, stacking up to 2 times and triggering once every 0.1 seconds. When reaching 2 stacks or when the second stack's duration is refreshed, increases all elemental damage bonus for your whole party for 15 seconds, scaling by 8% for every 1000 defense the equipping character has, up to a maximum of 25.6%. So around 3k defense is the limit. You can also equip her with the new forgeable sword, Flute of Espitzal, increasing defense by 16% for 15 seconds after using an elemental skill, increased to 32% at Refinement 5. If you feel like you're lacking energy recharge, Favonia's sword might be what you need, having energy recharge as a sub-stat and providing energy when dealing critical hits. Just keep in mind that if you go for this weapon, you may need to look for some crit rate in your artifacts to proc this effect easier. However, if you wish to play Xilonen as a main DPS rather than support, Urakumi Skiri might be even better than Peak Patrol Song for that, increasing normal attack damage by 16% and elemental skill damage by 24%, increasing by 100% for 15 seconds after a nearby active character deals geo damage. Furthermore, increases the wearer's defense by 20%. And if you manage to get the Cinnabar Spindle, it's also an option, increasing elemental skill damage by 40% of defense, increased to 80% at Refinement 5. This effect has a 1.5 second cooldown and is cleared immediately after the elemental skill deals damage. With that, we can move on to her artifacts, where Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City takes the top spot by a long shot, regenerating 6 energy for her after triggering a Night Soul Burst, and gaining a 12% elemental damage bonus after triggering an elemental reaction for the elemental types involved in said reaction. However, if she's in her Night Soul's Blessing state, all nearby party members gain an additional 28% elemental damage bonus for the elements involved in the reaction. This effect lasts for 20 seconds and can be triggered even when the equipper is off field. This set is so powerful because the buff it provides can be effectively permanent and can be activated for every single element in your party. If you want to pair Xilonen with someone that already has Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City equipped, or if you haven't had the chance to farm it, Archaic Petra is another really good choice, giving you a 15% geo damage bonus, and if you crystallize an element then pick up that element's shard, you gain a 35% damage bonus for the element that you crystallized. Keep in mind that Xilonen has to be the one to pick up the shard in order for this effect to work. Furthermore, Husk of Opulent Dreams is a strong choice if you wish to run her as a main DPS, increasing her defense by 30% and gaining the Curiosity effect, providing 6% defense and 6% geo damage bonus per stack with a maximum of 4 stacks. These stacks are gained by either hitting an opponent with a geo attack or by being off field. You're gonna want to stack as much defense as possible. However, please try to keep a good amount of energy recharge too. Try to aim for around 180 to 200% energy recharge. After that, you can keep going for defense. As for your main stats, Sands should be defense percent, but if you feel like you really need it, energy recharge is also an option. Goblet should be defense percent, but for a main DPS build, a geo damage bonus goblet isn't a bad choice if it has good enough substats to make up for the lost defense. And Circlet should be defense again, but if you're playing her with the Favonia sword, or if you're going for a main DPS build, feel free to go crit here. As for her team, well, there's really not much to say here other than the fact that you can put her pretty much anywhere as long as the team doesn't rely on Dendro or Anemo reactions. Feel free to place her anywhere you would place Kazuha. However, keep in mind that Xilonen isn't exactly a replacement for Kazuha. They still have their own strengths and weaknesses, their own places in some teams, and can even work together on some. She even functions in tri-element teams, as her source samples don't need to be of different elements, just different teammates. As I mentioned earlier, Xilonen is extremely versatile. She does have some notable teams where she is very good at. One such example is pairing her with Navia, Bennett, and Furina or Xiangling, since both Navia and Xilonen work best with non-geo teammates. She also works in a Neuvillette hypercarry team, having Neuvillette, Furina, and Kazuha. In this team, she will be replacing Zhongli. Xilonen can provide much better resistance shred than Zhongli, and can also easily stack Fanfare with her ultimate. However, Neuvillette is much more susceptible to being interrupted, so this team is at its strongest when either Xilonen or and Neuvillette RC1. That being said, if you want to play her as a main DPS, then you do have to be a little bit more mindful about who you pair her with, trying not to get 2 converted source samples, as having less than 2 increases her normal and plunging attack damage, so you get 2 Geo characters in 1 free slot. Gorou would work well here, thanks to his huge increase in defense and Geo damage. And for your other Geo unit, I would recommend either Chiori or Albedo due to their coordinated attacks, or Junjin for her normal attack buff and attack speed buff at C6. You could also place Zhongli here, but that would only contribute to resistance to interruption, as a shielder isn't really needed when the team has this much defense. And as for your free slot, you simply can never go wrong with Bennett. You could also place Furina here, however keep in mind that Xilonen won't be able to stack fanfare as easily as in the Neuvillette team, since this time she isn't paired with more than 2 non-Geo elements. Therefore, her burst will not heal. Now you know everything there is to know about Xilonen, I think. I'm not too sure myself. Regardless, thank you very much for watching. If this guide helped you, feel free to return the favor by liking and subscribing. As usual, if you have any suggestions, questions, corrections, or requests, be sure to leave a comment. I read every single one of them. Good luck in your pulls, and I'll see you next time.